Hi, and welcome. I'm your host, Tony DUrso. We showcase successful entrepreneurs along with humanitarian and noteworthy projects. We share wisdom, advice, and guidance with you to assist in your life, career, and business. Some great solutions and advice for you just ahead. And today is unique in that all of our guests are not only successful people in their own right, they are extraordinary authors with great lessons to share. Joining us today are Bob McGannon, veteran of IBM and a successful entrepreneur with businesses in the United States and Australia. He penned a thought-provoking book, Intelligent Disobedience, the difference between good and great leaders. Business leaders and employees alike are going to love this. And we have Robert Isenberg, a successful columnist for a group of gatehouse newspapers. He joins us to give us a humorous break with short stories titled, Why Men Are Suspicious of Yoga. And this book is not really about yoga. And we'll find out more about that in a moment. Lastly, legendary radio announcer Michael Benner joins us with his explosive new book, Fearless Intelligence. Wait till you hear about this. And before we begin, I wish to thank all the supporters of the Tony DUrso Show who made this possible. In addition to today's guests who provided great support, I also wish to thank Rob Kessler at Million-Dollar-Collar.com, Gene Ginsberg at GeneGinsberg.com, Jordan Goodman at MoneyAnswers.com, and a big thank you to Rich Tamayo, our Emmy-winning director, who helped design and produce a fine show. Get his website info in the ending credits. Thank you all for helping make this possible. The success of this show is yours. And lastly, I'm wearing the $1 Million Collar created by Rob Kessler. I love it, and I have it on all of my shirts. Doesn't that look great? Watch this. Your shirts always look sharp. No more dangling collar. How about that? Stay tuned for a commercial on $1 Million Collar later in this episode. And remember, success awaits those who persevere and remain steadfast despite the odds. Be righteous. Join me. Let's begin. Bob McGannon is the author of what I consider a revolutionary book, Intelligent Disobedience, the difference between good and great leaders. Now, Bob's an 18-year veteran at IBM, and he's an entrepreneur who's founded 3 companies in the United States and Australia. Bob helps businesses worldwide rethink their relationships with their rules and procedures, and he yields impressive results through training, consulting, and keynote programs. Now, can you imagine that? Disobeying the rules and yet succeeding. Here's Bob McGannon to tell us about his startling book, Intelligent Disobedience. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Great to be with you, Tony.
Bob, it's an honor to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to know all about this. It's quite an oxymoron of a concept. So let's start first with a definition. Can you define what is intelligent disobedience?
I wish I came up with the phrase myself, Tony, but I didn't. The phrase comes from the world of seeing eye dogs. You don't want the seeing eye dog to obey its master's every command, or they both get hit by a truck. The dog understands the goal and the objective and has the task of getting there safely. Now, when you take that context and you put it in the business scenario, I think about business processes. A good business process works quite well, maybe 95, 98% of the time. But what about the other 3 to 5% when it's not going to yield the outcome that the business or your client wants? What do you do then? That's intelligent disobedience. When do you disobey the rule, break a rule, add a new process in order to get a better business outcome?
I see. So for starters, a business leader would want to have everyone engage in intelligent disobedience.
Well, maybe not everyone. If I'm going to break or disobey the rule, I need to understand enough about my business environment, what might be a legal requirement and not just a rule within my business, but what my short and long-term objectives are and what the short and long-term implications might be of changing the rules. So first and foremost, your people would need to have done their homework, and they'd have to be in the environment long enough. Secondly, we might have some individuals, and you know them and I know them, very, very kind-hearted individuals that are going to want to do the right thing for a client, but might empty our bank account in the process of doing that. So it's a matter of having the right amount of homework and information about the business and having the right personality as well.
That's beginning to make a little bit more sense to me. Now, can you give us some examples of how an owner would actually apply this in his company?
I can tell you a story about a trip I made to the bank. And I walked into the bank with an unusual request. Now, just in case you're thinking otherwise, I didn't have a firearm or anything associated with this unusual request. But it was something that was not a common item. And I was working with a person, and she went through all the rules that she possibly could to try to find a process by which she could satisfy me. And she couldn't satisfy the request, even though she knew it was reasonable. That took an hour and a half. And then we get the bank manager involved, who ultimately says, yeah, we can vary a rule. How much cheaper would it have been for that bank, for that branch manager, to give this 15-year veteran individual who knew where all the rules were, if they only gave her the opportunity to vary those rules a little bit? I'd have been happier. They'd have saved money because they wouldn't have taken so much time. And everybody would have been in a much better position. From an entrepreneur's point of view, an entrepreneur is often going to break the rules anyway. That's natural. That's why they're going to create an entrepreneurial product. But sometimes they have to sell it to investors who don't think as radically as they do. And intelligent disobedience and how you package this information and how you communicate it is something I detail in the book quite frequently. And that's ultimately the key to success. You might have a great idea, but you have to ultimately convey it and apply it to someone else's business problem.
Bob, that's fascinating. Now, let me get this better understood. Let's go over what would be an overview of the steps necessary to actually implement the principle of intelligent disobedience within the workplace.
So first and foremost, a manager would have to take a look at his or her environment and say, what are the impenetrable boundaries? In other words, you don't want to break the law. So let's define those. And then you might look at other financial parameters. For instance, you could spend more than 10% of a designated amount without getting permission if you are a person that is inclined to engage in intelligent disobedience successfully. For other people, that might be a more narrow band. And then you determine those processes that are intended to create a consistent outcome, but won't always create a consistent outcome. And you define those for your team, give them the ability to have a bit of flexibility, again, to get the right outcome for the business and for the client. And then it becomes a full circle process. As someone maybe modifies the rules or breaks the rules, get your team together, understand what happened. Did it create the right outcome? And then maybe you ultimately modify those rules so you can accommodate that additional or different process to satisfy more of your clients more quickly. So it is the classic learning organization exercise. Tony, a number of years ago, people were all hyped up in the leadership space about empowerment, but no one defined a structure around which to convey what you were empowering people to do. That's what this intelligent disobedience parameter set does. And that's what the process that I've outlined in the book does. It gives the ability for the leader to get better outcomes by empowering their people, just like the master empowers its seeing eye dog, because that seeing eye dog has more information to get better, safer outcomes.
Now that's hitting the nail on the head for me. I'm getting the whole picture here on intelligent disobedience. What a radical concept. Now, I got to ask you, I have a couple more questions, but one thing is, as an author, when we write a book, we have a concept. We know where we're going, what we want the reader to get away with it. What do you want to impart? What do you want the person to come away with?
I think there's two things really, Tony. The first is understanding that processes were not written with a crystal ball, and one's job should not be to follow the process. One's job should be to use the process as a tool when that tool works for them. That's the first thing. So again, it's, as we talked about earlier, it's changing the relationship with process. But the second, from a leader's point of view, is if you give your team the flexibility to do the right thing, to make adjustments, to break the rules once in a while to get that better outcome, they're going to approach their job more authentically. Just picture two people, one that goes to work and goes home and saying, I had the ability, I had the smarts, I had the capability to do the right thing, but the process inhibited me. And how are they going to feel versus the person that faces the very same situation with the ability to engage in a bit of intelligent disobedience and get the right outcome and then go home? How do you think those two people are going to feel? I bet you the latter one is going to be much happier at work, feel much more authentic as a person that goes to work. And can you imagine the performance improvement or the morale improvement you're going to get if everybody in your team felt like that second person that could engage in intelligent disobedience versus the first that goes home frustrated?
Those are great points. And as I think about this, Bob, I think back on the years of people telling me stories just like this, where they couldn't implement something that would help the company, but they were blocked by a rule or something, and how dumb, the company is to not look at that point. And this is absolutely amazing. I bet you're having tremendous success implementing this process in companies.
I will share with you, it's what I have hoped to do is create a lot of dialogue, and I've actually been pretty successful with that thus far. And Tony, this is hot off the presses. My book has been nominated for the Financial Times McKinsey Business Book of the Year Award in London. So we'll find out more about that in the autumn, I should say, in London. And we're pretty excited about that. But that tells me that this book is creating dialogue, which is really what I hope to do. If we can get more people more fulfilled in their job, we're going to get better performance from the business point of view, and we're going to have happier people as well. And what a positive outcome that would be.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And to everyone, please go to intelligentdisobedience.com. You'll find out more about it. You'll see some videos on how this process was developed. You'll find out more about the book. Check it out and help your company, help your business grow. Once again, Bob, thanks so much for sharing.
Thanks for being with you, Tony. It's been a lot of fun.
You wear a dress shirt when it's important to look good. But without a tie, the collar sags, which causes you to constantly adjust. I invented $1 Million Collar for one reason: to keep your collar looking sharp when you're not wearing a tie. So you can walk into any meeting, any event, any situation with confidence. $1 Million Collar is a sewn-in collar support that creates a clean neckline you never have to worry about. Say goodbye to saggy collars forever and look like $1 million with $1 Million Collar.
Robert Eisenberg designed boots and shoes for domestic factories until they closed their doors to foreign competition. So he moved overseas. Clever. But during his pastime in traveling, Robert turned to something you would never imagine. He turned to writing short, humorous essays and performing them at many speaking engagements. And for the last nearly 5 years, Robert is the humor columnist for a group of gateway newspapers. And at a time when the world needs more lightheartedness, Robert's going to tell us about his latest book, a collection of short stories titled Why Men Are Suspicious of Yoga. And by the way, it's not really about yoga. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you so much.
Robert, the honor is mine. And I must ask, you're a successful columnist. What made you write this book?
Well, basically, when you write a column, you don't know what the reaction or response will be out there. But it was so favorable that I decided that I wanted more people to hear and see my stories. And, when I was writing for the papers, they were local. They were mostly 5 or 6 areas that are very close to my house. And I want my book to be out there basically all over the world. I want people to laugh, and I don't want to keep it exclusively for where I live. I
like that, Robert. And we all have our reasons, but what is your drive or motivation in making people laugh?
It's like music to my ears when I hear laughter. And when people respond to something I have developed and worked on and they find it funny, I couldn't get more pleasure. And, I just read something interesting about laughter. it said, you know, you're almost necessary to applaud, but laughter is an initial honest response.
I like that. Very nice. Very nice. And I love humor, and I love your stories. And to the audience, you got to check this out. And that is at roberteisenberg.org. You're going to see it on the bottom. A great selection of short stories. Love it. But I got to ask, what made you pick this title for your book?
Well, I performed that title, that essay, probably about 15 years ago. And I don't think I've performed it maybe once since then. But I just thought that it was an eye catcher. I loved the particular essay that I wrote about it. And, you know, basically my wife has been a yoga teacher, I'd say, for 30 years. And the story goes on about her asking me how long she's been a yoga teacher. She's got me trapped in a car. And you know you can't give the right answer. If I say too few, I don't respect her. And if I say too many, I don't respect her enough. So I just thought that the title resonated. And I love the story. It's in the middle of the book. And I urge anybody who buys the book to get to that story and see that you have the same response that I do, that it's funny.
Thank you for that, Robert. And as a fellow author, when I write a book, I have a purpose in mind of what I want the readers to get. What do you want readers to get from reading this book?
I want them to have fun. I want them to basically can't wait for the next page. That's basically what I've seen in the reviews. There were some 21 reviews, all 5-star on Amazon. And then I got personal reviews up in Algonquin, Maine. The woman next door bought a book on Monday, and Tuesday she came back for 4. And she said to another neighbor, "This is the best book you'll read in the next 5 years." She said, "I was feeling depressed in the morning, read the book, and it just changed my day."
Thank you, Robert. I absolutely love it. And I couldn't tell you right offhand which story I love the most. They're all so funny. Can you share one of your stories with the audience, please?
Yeah, you know, there's one about my wife asking me to go to Costco and pick up 2 packages of toilet paper. There's 36 rolls in each package. And you can't put them under the cart. You have to put them over. So it's very difficult to steer to the cash register. So I thought I was really lucky because there was only one person in front of me. Turns out it was my next door neighbor. And she knows that only 2 of us live in this house. And she looks in the cart and she says the same thing to herself. What does his wife feed him? And, you know, she leaves and she says, "Have a nice lunch," with a smirk on her face. And then we go off to Maine that day. This is about a year ago. And then, you know, you go through the usual procedure, where you're going to sit. That's going to be your real estate for the next 2 or 3 hours. And I wanted to be near the restroom because I'd had more than my share of coffee and orange juice. And I finally get up to the restroom after an hour of reading. And, you know, when I'm going back, I'm noticing that everybody seems to be smiling at me. I'm also praying because I can't, you know, when you get to the beach and you come out of a restroom, go figure where you were. Every umbrella looks the same. Every beach ball looks the same. And I'm praying that a do-gooder doesn't come over to me and say, "Can I help you, sir?" And you know that "sir" is code for geezer. So anyhow, I'm walking back to where I think my wife is. And I notice I'm getting all these smiles, particularly from women. And I'm thinking, boy, I'm really happy that I worked out over the winter and I must look pretty buff. And I'm really feeling good about myself. And finally, I get back to the blanket where my wife is, and I touch her foot. And I say, "You know, a lot of young women were smiling at me. I guess I really look buff." And she looks up and she says, "Yes, Mr. Buff, you got toilet paper hanging from your bathing suit." So, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, I had a couple of funny experiences with the book. One of them is about a party that I say my sister threw in Texas. Well, my sister-in-law calls me on the phone, and she's really upset. She had read the book. And I said, "What are you upset about, Ruth?" She said that I wasn't invited to the party. 25 minutes later, I realized that I had to call her back. I made up the party. There never was a party. And I didn't know quite how to put that story together unless I created a party, which never happened.
I love that, Robert. There's no party. And I'm still chuckling on "have a nice lunch." These are really great stories. And I just want to say to everyone, get this book at roberteisenberg.org. ISENBERG.org. Did I say that right, Robert?
You did. It's Eisenberg with no E in front. Why men are suspicious of yoga.
Thank you so much. Really love it. You've made us laugh. And you know, the world needs more of this. So please, everyone, buy 4 and pass them out to friends. We want to spread the cheer. Michael Benner is best known throughout Southern California for his radio talk programs. Since 1977, he's hosted talk and news radio programs in Los Angeles on KABC AM, KLOS FM, KLSX FM, KCBS FM, KRLA AM, and KPFK FM. And in 1987, Michael left broadcasting as a full-time profession to begin personal development strategies. With offices now in Palm Springs, California, Michael provides counseling and training to individuals and couples, as well as consulting and training for business executives, managers, and teams. And now Michael's here to tell us about his great new book, Fearless Intelligence. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Well, thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Michael, the honor is all mine, and indeed, once again, the pleasure is mine to have you on my shows. Thank you so much. And we're all wondering about what is fearless intelligence, so let's begin. First, what do you mean when you say in your book, fear is not about danger?
Well, it certainly appears to be, and many people push back when I assert that. But if you think about it, most fear, in fact, I'll say all fear, is ultimately fear of the unknown, whether danger is an element or not. In other words, imagine somebody who handles snakes, who raises snakes and knows all about snakes. That man or woman would probably not have as much fear as somebody else if they were around a poisonous snake. But the snake is just as dangerous to a snake handler as anybody else. So the fear is really not an indication of danger. It's what we don't know about the danger or any other situation. How many times have you asked yourself, what am I afraid of? And you had no idea. So whether we call it anxiety or stress, fear is always what we do not know.
Those are really good points. And I totally understand for a person who makes it their life and it does something such as handling snakes, alligators, reptiles, whatever, someone else would be deathly afraid of them. Very good point. And now you say the best parts of us are hidden where we're most afraid to look?
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? In other words, we have enormous potential that we rarely discover because it's hidden within our fears and our anxieties and all the negative emotional feelings that are symptoms of that stress, anxiety, and fear. And it's only when we confront fear, again, which represents what we do not know, that we could possibly learn about it and then discover these hidden potentials within us, our ability to be smarter, more creative, to use our imagination in remarkable ways, and emotional intelligence as well, to be more loving, to be more insightful, to be more intuitive. And this actually is a form of intelligence called wisdom. And wisdom can be taught.
I like that a lot. And I think part of this boils down to being aware, being self-aware actually. And I'd love to know if you have some ways to help develop and get that out of us so that we can be better self-aware.
The mind continues to think on its own agenda. And we're usually not aware of the difference between self-directed thinking, conscious, deliberate thinking, and this stream of consciousness, these trains of thought that bubble up all by themselves. Part of self-awareness is to recognize that distinction, and then also to be aware of our emotions, to recognize anger, for example, while it's still small and on the horizon, would give you an opportunity to do something about it, to ask yourself, what does this mean? And what can I do to prevent myself from becoming even more angry and then doing something that I regret, or saying something that I'm going to wish I hadn't said, you know?
Now, Michael, this is very intriguing. And also, you mentioned negative emotions. Well, they're painful, they hurt, but yet you say that they can be very helpful to us.
Yes, everything that hurts us, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, is a symptom, an alert, the brain's request for more information. Physical pain says, pay attention. You have an injury or perhaps a symptom of an illness that requires your attention, and you need to understand it better. And the same thing with emotional pain. Our heartache, our sadness, our upset, our frustration and irritation, even feelings of humiliation. If we could get past our fixation on the person, the group, or the event that caused us to feel this way, and recognize the negative emotion, the heartache or upset, as a personal response, take ownership of it, in other words, we can learn what it has to teach us and thereby be smarter and, in this case, wiser.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing this all with us, Michael Benner. And to the audience, you can get his book at fearlessintelligence.com. Read about it, check it out. Michael, thank you so much for sharing this with us. It's truly an honor to have you, and I wish you the best of success with your book, Fearless Intelligence. Please go to TonyDUrso.com/vision and get the vision map free. Do that now. Follow the steps and you can guarantee yourself much success. TonyDUrso.com/vision. And thank you again for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you. Please come back and check out my other shows. They're all aimed at making you more and more successful. And please follow me on social media. It's Tony DUrso on Twitter and Tony S. DUrso for Facebook and Instagram. Remember that S for Facebook and Instagram. Thanks again, and remember, success awaits those who persevere and remain steadfast despite the odds. Be righteous. Join me on the next episode of the Tony DUrso TV show. You heard that a majority of businesses failed. Don't be a statistic. Get my book free, The Vision Map. Beat the odds for your business success. Get it free at TonyDUrso.com/vision and set up your own successful vision map. TonyDUrso.com/vision.